They are going to talk to us about Measure C.
We got a live mic? Oh, that's a good thing. I'm Ron Gasto, and this is Rich Dian. And we're going to tell you a little bit about Measure C, which is coming up. What Measure C basically does is takes our city clerk, which is now an elected official, and makes it an appointed official. And the main reason behind this is that we want to make sure that somebody that's coming into this important job, which makes sure that all the gears of the city and everything works, is very qualified on the job they have. Right now, about 73% of the cities in California now have appointed city clerks. And if you know, also the Board of Supervisors has a city clerk, a clerk that is appointed. Now, these are professional people. And as you know, when we get elected, we're learning on the job. You know, us elected officials, I'm in it 2 years now and I'm still learning on the job. You don't want somebody that's, has the responsibility like a clerk to be learning on the job. That's what we're trying to do, is just trying to get somebody in there very qualified to help us get our city running as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, so currently our city clerk is recommending that we go to an appointed clerk. And the word appointed, it would be a city employee, just a regular city employee, but they would be qualified. Right now, to be the city clerk at election, you have to be 18 years old and a U.S. citizen. That's all you have to do. You don't have to know anything about the job. So you don't have to have any typing skills, computer skills, learn about legal notices. You don't have to have anything. So we're sort of behind in that in Crescent City, when most cities have employees that are doing that. And so, as an employee, if we go to the appointed city clerk, if Measure C passes, whoever gets that job will have to meet all the qualifications of it: typing, computer skills, know how to do legal notices, all that stuff, plus attend a 350-hour class and pass it, given by the state of California for clerks. Currently, an elected clerk doesn't have to take anything, just has to show up, and that's that. And we use our clerk for a lot of things. Every city council meeting, have to take the notes, have to type up the minutes, and things like that. And so that's why we'd like to go to an appointed city clerk who would have to fulfill their job obligations, or they wouldn't be an employee anymore, because they would get regular evaluations like every other city employee. And so it's Measure C, and that's all it says. It's as simple as that, and it's only for city voters, because it's a city job. So it's for city voters, and there's lots of skills that the city clerk has to do. A lot of people don't know what a city clerk does. Let me give you some of the things they do. They file resolutions, they publish in the newspaper legal notices, they serve as the filing officer overseeing conflict of interest statements required by state law. They manage the records retention program. They maintain custody of preserving our city records. And that's just a few of the positions that the city clerk's position does. And so they have to be trained in that. And so they'll do it. Yes?
Is this appointment, is there a term to it, or is it just automatically keeps going on?
Right. Appointment, I don't think that's a very good word. I think they use that because versus elected. It's a city employee. There's a job flyer. Anybody in the county can apply for it, by the way. To be the city clerk now, you have to live in the city. But under the appointed city clerk, any resident in the county can apply, and they'll have the job description, and they have to be qualified to do that job.
For 4 years, if you were...
No, just like a regular employee, as long as they're doing an adequate job. And then they'll be sent to that training school to learn about that job. But they have to have the basics: filing, typing, computer skills, and things like that.
So they're going to have to go to this class for 300 days?
300 hours.
Or 300 hours. And that of course is...
That'll train them how to do that particular job.
That'll train them how to do that's before they get the job.
No, they'll get the job first to make sure they have all the skills that they need, basic skills, and then they'll be sent to a training school.
Currently, they're not being...
No, an elected person doesn't have to attend any of that. Anybody can do that. That's all they have to do is be elected, be 18 years old and a citizen.
Right, and the elected clerk does not have to answer to the city manager. They do answer to the council, and, you know, but to remove an elected city clerk, you have to go through a recall. To remove an appointed clerk, you would go through the regular employee discipline process. And one great point about this is that there will be no additional cost this as if we go to an appointed clerk as an elected clerk, because there's really not going to be any new additions or positions, so it'll be straight through, so there's no cost to the taxpayer on top of what we're trying to do here. It's just trying to get a skilled person into the job.
Check question.
Two things that, so you're saying that for Measure C, that only the city people can vote on it?
Right, it's a city.
But you said anybody can live anywhere.
No, I said if it passes, if Measure C passes,
Yeah.
when we go outside to look for a person, anybody in the county can apply.
Okay.
But if they're elected, as it is now, they can only live in the city.
Right. And also, who pays for that 350 hours?
That's paid for by the state to train them in the city. They do it together, like they do now. State and city pay for that training. That's how it's done now in several jobs. Yes.
Okay.
If they're qualified for the job, what do they have to go to school for?
They have to go for the training of that job. Qualified for the job would be they can type, they can use computer skills, they know how to file, things like that, basic skills. And then they learn. Then they go to that class to learn what the city clerk does, how to file, how to write things up. But you have to learn how to use a computer before you can put anything on the computer. And right now, you don't have to have any qualifications.
Somebody can't find that.
Okay, we'll take another. Yes.
So they're not are they an at-will employee, or they?
No, they're not at will. They're just a regular city employee. So if they're not doing their job, you know, they get evaluations. If they're not doing their job and they don't improve, it's like any other city job or county job. They can be dismissed. But an elected official, elected person, can only be dismissed by recall and don't have to answer to anyone. Yes?
Have you been having problems with the way it's been run?
No, we haven't had. Our current city clerk is fine. We've had trouble in the past, though. Several ex-council people have told us that things are not put in the paper on time in a timely manner. And you see, if you look in the triplicate, you'll see things from the city and county legal notices. You have to do those like 20 days in advance, 30. If you miss it, you have to start all over again. And it's costly. And so we want to be in line with the other cities. All cities have an appointed city clerk. So that's Measure C. And thank you for giving us the time for Measure C. I'm sorry it's only for city residents, but if it passes, then that job can be anywhere in the county. Who's qualified for that job, who's ever qualified. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Randy Hatfield, who's going to talk about Measure F.
thank you. I'm going to tell you the background on Measure F and why we're producing or promoting Measure F. In 2009, the fairs were all funded by horse racing. In 2009 was the last year that the fairs received money from horse racing. In 2010, the legislators decided that we're going to fund the fairs through the general fund. And give the fairs across the board $30 million a year. It didn't have to go through any budget review or anything of that nature. Our CEO of Bushman Fairs said, it's kind of like jumping out of a fiery building into a sinking ship. Well, the following year, 2011, the boat sank. The money was gone. There was no notice, there was no indication that these funds were going to be taken away from us. For our fair, it meant $200,000. That's 1/3 of our budget. In 2011, November of 2011, we went to a manager's meeting. I went to a fair manager's meeting, and all the fair managers are in a room like this, and the department secretary of Ag came to us and said to us, we're really happy about the fairs, we support the fairs and so forth, but we don't have any money for you. But we do have money to help close you. We call it the funeral fund. Right at that point, I came home, sat down with my fair board and said, we have to do this on our own. We're not going to get any help from Sacramento. None. Their plan in 2013, or actually 2012, the governor asked the Department of Food and Ag to get together with a group of people, fair managers and so forth, to come up with a solution, a plan for the fairs, so they can have a model to go on in the future. It ended up, by the time it was over, from 20 people to 130 people on that plan, in that group. We have never seen the plan. We've asked for it. It is somewhere on his desk. There is no plan. Unfortunately, there was a lot of fairs like ourselves in the rural communities that were waiting for some guidance, some direction, some leadership. And unfortunately, it never happened. Again, like I said, came home, talked to the fair board and said, we have to do it on our own. How can we recap $200,000 a year? We can't have enough bake sales. We can't do enough grants to make up on a yearly basis $200,000. Luckily, the fair board, over the last previous years, raised enough money and put away enough money to put in the bank to make sure the fair survives. We didn't realize it was going to be for this. We have enough money in the bank to carry ourselves through 2016. After 2016, we're out of money, and the fairgrounds will close. We wanted to make sure and be proactive and try to come up with a solution now and not wait until the last minute. Our solution was to come up with a revenue source that would keep our fair going for the next 2 to 3 decades. Measure F. We didn't want a property tax. That was one thing that was in our discussions, was not going to be an option. We didn't want a tax that was going to continue to be on forever, that wouldn't drop off. So we came up with a tax, 1/4% sales tax for a period of 7 years. After the 7 years, it drops off.